This is the Walking Dead universe, a world that seems to exist entirely inside the state of Georgia. But it got me thinking, what if the apocalypse hit every country? How would the rest of the world survive in a Walking Dead universe? And no, we're not talking about the AMC version. We're talking about real life. To figure it out, we'll be ranking every country using this tier list. The higher you are on it, the higher your chances of turning into a growling zombie with the motor skills of a 4-year-old. We're starting with the classic, the US of A, the home of obesity, and the storage unit for automatic weapons. Now, most zombie movies are set here, so it might seem like a no-brainer, right? But what they always get wrong, especially The Walking Dead, is the biggest pro of all, the US military. You're telling me a high school gym teacher who plays Gears of War on weekends survived a decade in the apocalypse with a baseball bat and somehow built an entire community from scratch. But the US Army, with tanks, machine guns, and literal air support, lost to a bunch of walkers who move like toddlers learning to walk? Yeah, doesn't add up. This isn't AMC. This is real life. The US military would lock down cities, fortify rural areas, and clear the rest block by block. Next up, population density. The US is actually way more empty than you think. Sure, if you live in Jersey, it feels like everyone's breathing your air. But go to the Midwest or Alaska. There's farmland, livestock, and more fresh water than you could ever need. Throw in a couple of automatic weapons, and you're basically set. And speaking of guns, there are literally more guns than people. Defending yourself from slow-moving corpses? Yeah, not exactly a challenge. But, of course, there's a catch. Most Americans live in massive cities like New York, LA, and Chicago, which would turn into death traps instantly. Everyone trying to escape at once? Roads jammed, highways clogged, instant chaos. Then there's that gun ownership thing again. Great for defense, terrible for trust. Paranoia and resource fights would skyrocket. Still, we're judging the whole country here, not just New York or California. So, overall, I'm ranking the United States barely in the main character energy tier. Now, let's move to the home of K-pop, South Korea. Yeah, you're cooked. First off, population density. When I think of crowded places, I usually think India or coastal China. But nope, South Korea's even worse. Stack that on top of the fact that it's a peninsula, which means there's basically no escaping unless you've got a boat. Combine that with low gun ownership and the fact that South Korea imports most of its food, and things go downhill fast. Sure, there are a couple of pros. The mandatory military service means a big part of the population actually knows how to handle a weapon. That's a plus. And maybe some of the offshore islands could serve as safe zones. But let's be honest, when it comes to survival odds, that's not enough. Sorry, K-pop fans. South Korea's landing straight in the no-chance tier. The next country we're ranking is Brazil. And when I think of Brazil, 3 things instantly come to mind: soccer, favelas, and the Amazon rainforest. Now, at first glance, Brazil might seem like it's got a shot. It's massive, packed with natural resources, and has entire regions of untouched wilderness. Sounds like a survivalist's dream, right? You could literally disappear into the Amazon and not see another soul for months. But that's kind of where the problems start. First off, population density isn't the issue. Location is. Most people live along the coast in huge cities like Rio and São Paulo. Those cities would fall fast. The moment panic hits, you'd have millions trying to flee inland on highways that are already chaotic on a normal day. Now imagine that, but with zombies. Yeah, no thanks. Second, Brazil's infrastructure would crumble quick. Electricity, sanitation, food delivery, all of it depends heavily on logistics that would collapse within days. And let's not forget, Brazil's favelas are tightly packed, which would turn them into instant infection zones. Now, about that wilderness everyone talks about, the Amazon isn't the safe haven people think it is. It's one of the most hostile environments on Earth. You've got venomous snakes, jaguars, insects carrying who knows what, and almost zero infrastructure. Surviving there would be just as hard as surviving the apocalypse itself. Then there's the climate, hot, humid, and perfect for disease and decay to spread like wildfire. And with strict gun laws, most civilians wouldn't have much to defend themselves early on. So, with all that in mind, Brazil isn't doomed, but it's definitely not thriving either. You'd have pockets of survivors holding strong in the countryside, but the cities? Total loss. I'm placing Brazil firmly in the barely alive tier. I believe the first wave itself would wipe out most of the population, and that's exactly why I'm ranking it here. Survivable, if you know when to run and where to hide. Finally, we've got New Zealand. The land of sheep and Lord of the Rings. That one place everyone swears they'll move to when the world ends. Well, in a Walking Dead universe, that might actually not be such a bad idea. Let's start with the pros. First off, it's an island nation, which is an absolute jackpot when the undead start roaming. Isolation is your best defense. No land borders mean no zombie hordes casually strolling in from next door. You'd only have to worry about what's already on the island. Next, population density is super low. Most of New Zealand is wide open countryside, farmlands, and small towns. That means fewer people turning, fewer infection zones, and more space to spread out and survive. Plus, the country's already self-sufficient in food, tons of agriculture, livestock, and clean water. If any country could live off the land, it's this one. And let's not forget, the government's also relatively organized, so the first few weeks of chaos might actually be contained better than in most countries. Now, the cons. New Zealand's small population is both a blessing and a curse. Once major cities like Auckland and Wellington fall, manpower becomes a serious problem. Keeping power, transportation, and healthcare running would get tough fast. Another downside? While isolation keeps zombies out, it also means no backup. Once you're cut off, you're on your own. And if the infection spreads through airports or seaports before lockdown, both islands could get overwhelmed early on. Even then, New Zealand's geography, discipline, and self-reliance give it one of the best fighting chances on the planet. I'm placing New Zealand comfortably in the main character energy tier. It's not perfect, but if there's any place you'd actually want to be when the world ends, it's here. So, what do you think about the rankings? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And hey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.